"You're going to die in this nursing home," the millionaire's son coldly told his elderly mother as he threw her out of the house. The very next day, he was stunned to see 3 black cars parked menacingly at his front door. What if the person you loved most, the one you sacrificed everything for, was secretly plotting your demise? I mean, trying to literally kill you for their own gain. Because that's the terrifying truth my dear friend Dorothy had to face, looking into the cold, calculating eyes of her own son. It all started in a mansion that absolutely glowed with old money, golden light streaming through huge windows, priceless Persian rugs, and art on every wall. But forget the luxury. The air was so thick with tension you could almost taste it. Dorothy, a beautiful elderly woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, moved with such difficulty, each step a struggle. Her eyes, though tired, still held this incredible kindness. She was carrying a silver tea tray, a family heirloom, her hands trembling slightly. "I made your favorite tea, my son," she said, her voice soft and sweet, placing the delicate porcelain cup next to the mountain of paperwork Russell was obsessively examining. "The special leaves your father loved when he needed to think clearly." And Russell? He didn't even look up. He was a tall, imposing man in a suit that looked sewn onto him, his dark hair meticulously slicked back. His face was sharp, almost handsome, if it wasn't for the sheer coldness radiating from him. His eyes, the same brown as Dorothy's, held none of her warmth. They were calculating, pragmatic, constantly sizing up everything and everyone. He tapped his perfectly manicured fingers on the documents, pretending to read them, though he knew every word by heart. "I don't have time for tea, Mother," he finally snapped, his voice dry and full of barely concealed irritation. "I have important matters to resolve, and you're bothering me with these unnecessary formalities." Dorothy's eyes flickered with sadness, but she quickly hid it behind a resigned smile. This wasn't the boy she'd raised. Not the one who'd cried over scraped knees or hugged her tight during thunderstorms. She remembered working endless overtime after her husband died, skipping meals so Russell would never go without, staying up all night by his bed. Every sacrifice, every ounce of love, flashed through her mind. "Forgive me," she murmured, taking a step back, gripping the tray tighter to hide her trembling hands. "I just thought you might like something to drink." The heavy silence that followed was broken only by the relentless tick-tock of an antique clock. Dorothy stood there, waiting for permission to leave, her heart tightening. She knew that look on Russell's face. It was his precursor to delivering devastating news, a mix of impatience and utter contempt for anyone else's feelings. "I sold the house," he announced, without preamble, as if discussing the weather. Dorothy felt the floor drop out from under her. The tray clinked dangerously. Her breath caught. Had she misheard? But Russell's resolute expression confirmed it all. "You sold our house," she stammered, her voice cracking. "How could you do this without consulting me? Your father built this mansion with so much love for us." Russell let out an exasperated sigh, treating her like a particularly slow child. There was no remorse in his eyes, just brutal, calculating coldness. "Business isn't going well, Mother. I need immediate liquidity, and this house is too valuable an asset to just sit idle." He continued, each word a needle piercing her heart. "Besides, you're too old to live alone in this huge place. It's time for alternatives more suitable to your condition." That house wasn't just a property. It was her entire life. Every corner held a memory. Watching Russell sleep, cooking family meals, the roses her late husband planted. It was a sanctuary. "But where will I go?" she asked, tears welling up. "This is my home. All my memories are here." Russell stood, adjusting his jacket, his posture radiating impatience. He walked to the window, eyeing the sprawling garden, already calculating his profit. "I found a perfectly suitable place for you," he said, words carefully chosen to mask his true intentions. "A cozy establishment, people your age, professionals to care for your needs. You won't have to worry about a large house or loneliness. It's the best solution for everyone." A chill ran down Dorothy's spine. She knew that tone. It was his negotiation voice trying to push an unfavorable deal. She might not understand finance, but she understood manipulation. This cozy place filled her with dread. It wasn't just fear of change, it was a gut-wrenching certainty that her own son was plotting something truly awful for her. "When will I have to leave?" she asked, desperately trying to maintain composure. "I need time to organize my things." Russell glanced at his expensive watch. "The new owners want the house vacated by tomorrow." He placed a hand on her fragile shoulder, a gesture that might fool an outsider, but Dorothy felt it as just another act. "I've arranged for a team to pack your essential belongings." "Don't worry, Mother. I'm doing this for your own good. Tomorrow, I'll take you to your new home." Before Dorothy could even process the shock, high heels clicked on the marble floor. Brittany, Russell's girlfriend, entered the room, looking like she already owned the place. Barely 30, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, flawless makeup, and a smile that never reached her shrewd eyes. Her strong perfume overwhelmed the gentle scent of tea. "Hello, dear Dorothy," Brittany cooed, her sweetness as artificial as her nails. "Russell told me about the new plans. I'm sure you'll love the new place, much more suitable for someone in your condition." Dorothy felt a wave of nausea. The look of complicity between Russell and Brittany, a private joke at her expense, a silent conspiracy. The tea tray felt impossibly heavy. "If you'll excuse me," she muttered, somehow placing it on a side table. "I need to start sorting my things." Russell made a dismissive gesture, clearly relieved. The moment Dorothy left, his mask completely crumbled. Brittany wrapped her arm around him. "Did she believe your story?" she whispered, ambition shining in her eyes. "She seems quite shaken." Russell gave a soft laugh, devoid of any real joy, only cruel satisfaction. He pulled Brittany closer, his eyes fixed on the hallway where his mother had disappeared. "Tomorrow, we'll get rid of her and finally have access to that safe the old man hid." He paused, his voice dripping with perverse pleasure. "My father was always too suspicious, keeping secrets even from me. But now, with the old woman out of the way, I'll have access to everything that belongs to me by right." But here's the truly twisted part. Dorothy hadn't gone far. That maternal instinct, the same one that told her when Russell was lying as a child, made her pause, partially hidden behind a half-open door. Sometimes, age brought not just limitations, but the fierce wisdom of experience. And Dorothy knew her son too well not to suspect his true intentions. Hearing those words, an invisible fist squeezed her heart. The pain was so intense, so overwhelming, she thought it was purely emotional. But then came the tightness in her chest, radiating to her left arm, making each breath a monumental effort. Her vision blurred, not just from tears, but from something far more serious. The room spun. She stumbled, leaning against the wall, murmuring, "My medicine. I need my medicine." She knew these symptoms. Her fragile heart had protested before, but never like this. She dragged herself to her room, collapsing onto the bed. Her hands shook as she reached for her pill bottle. And then, a new wave of despair. It was empty. "It cannot be," she whispered, terrified. "I got a new box last week." In that terrifying moment of clarity, it hit her. Russell had insisted on helping her with her medications lately, claiming concern for her fragile memory. He'd offered to organize them. And she, touched by his rare gesture of consideration, had allowed it. The reality was a sledgehammer. Her own son had deliberately removed her life-saving medication, hoping she would suffer exactly what was happening now. He wasn't just taking her house, he was taking her very life. The pain intensified. "My God, what has my son become?" she sighed as darkness began to invade her vision. In her last lucid moments, she remembered her husband, Henry, always suspicious of Russell's ambition. "Our Russell has my talent for business, but he doesn't have your heart," he used to say. "One day, I fear that will destroy him and everyone around him." Dorothy realized she needed all her strength and cunning to survive. "I won't give up without a fight," was her last conscious thought before the world went black. The nursing home was like something out of a bad dream. Peeling, faded green walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and the cloying smell of cheap disinfectant mixed with something less identifiable. It felt less like a place of care and more like a place people were sent to be forgotten. In a tiny room at the end of the corridor, Dorothy slowly opened her eyes. A thin mattress, stained walls, a wobbly wardrobe, a half-empty glass of water. Where am I? She mumbled, disoriented. This isn't my home. Russell, can someone tell me what's going on? A young nurse, Lindsay, rushed to her side. She couldn't have been more than 25, with a gentle face and genuine compassion in her eyes, a stark contrast to the place. Easy, Mrs. Dorothy. You're at Golden Rest Nursing Home. Your son brought you here last night. You fainted at home, and he wanted us to take care of you. The confusion on Dorothy's face slowly morphed into dawning horror. Russell's cold announcement, Brittany's complicity, the empty medicine bottle, the searing pain in her chest. It wasn't a nightmare. This was her new reality. Her eyes scanned the desolate room. This wasn't a hospital. It was worse. A low-cost nursing home. A place where people came to die, forgotten. No, there must be a mistake. My son is trying to get rid of me to take our house. He brought me here without my consent. I need to leave. Call the police. Lindsay exchanged a knowing glance with a passing staff member, a look that said, another one of those confused old people. She gently adjusted Dorothy's pillow, her voice condescendingly soft. Mrs. Dorothy, your son explained everything. You had an episode of mental confusion, common for your age. He brought you here for specialized care, since he can't offer it himself. It was all for your well-being. The admission documents were all properly signed. The powerlessness was crushing. She was trapped. Her own son had kidnapped her, fabricated a story, and now no one would believe her. My belongings, my clothes, my documents, my medications. Dorothy demanded, fighting to maintain composure. Especially my heart medication. Lindsay hesitated. There was something in Dorothy's clear eyes, the precise articulation of her words, that didn't fit Russell's story. Lindsay had seen real confusion. This wasn't it. You arrived with only the clothes on your back, she admitted. Your son said he'd bring some basic things later. For your medications, a doctor visits weekly. Do you remember what you take? Dorothy closed her eyes, battling despair. No documents, no medications, no contact with the outside world. Russell had thought of everything. This wasn't an oversight, it was a meticulous plan to isolate her, erase her identity, reduce her to just another forgotten elderly woman. My heart medication is vital. Without it, she didn't need to finish. The meaning hung heavy in the air. Please, I'm not confused. My son is plotting something terrible. I heard him talking about getting rid of me, about a safe. He intentionally emptied my bottles. This isn't paranoia. It's the truth. Something in Dorothy's intensity, the coherence of her story, made Lindsay doubt. She'd seen wealthy families dump relatives here for inheritance, but Dorothy's narrative was frighteningly consistent. I'll see what I can do, Mrs. Dorothy, Lindsay whispered, adjusting the pillow. And don't worry. Not everyone here thinks you're confused. I've noticed your lucidity. The hours dragged. Dorothy alternated between despair and iron determination. Her mind, still sharp, raced for an escape. Every sound made her stiffen, dreading yet hoping for Russell's visit. She needed to confront him. I can't give up now. I still have strength to fight, she murmured. If only I could contact Anthony, my husband's old lawyer. Then, firm footsteps in the corridor. Not Lindsay's. These were decisive, the steps of someone who moved through the world without obstacles. Russell. Fear surged, then a surprising resolve. This was her chance. Hello, Mother. How are you adapting to your new home? Russell asked, entering, depositing a small plastic bag on the bed. Just some basic clothes and hygiene items. Didn't go overboard. Your needs are quite simple now. He looked like a king visiting a dungeon, his expensive suit a violent contrast to the decay. He smiled politely, but his eyes remained cold. He closed the door. Why are you doing this to me, Russell? Dorothy asked, her voice surprisingly firm. What did I do to deserve this from my own son? All I ever did was love you unconditionally, sacrifice my life for your happiness. Russell let out a dry, humorless laugh. He pulled up the room's only chair and crossed his legs. For a fleeting moment, A flicker of sincerity crossed his face, a rare window into his twisted thoughts. Love unconditionally? Sacrifice, he sneered. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up under the constant shadow of a father who never trusted me? Who kept secrets, setting traps as if I were an enemy, not his only heir? His voice was bitter. But that doesn't matter. Business is business, and you've become an obstacle. Dorothy felt a mix of horror and profound sadness. He'd rewritten his childhood, twisting his father's love into mistrust. Your father loved you deeply, Russell. If he took precautions, it was because he knew the temptations of wealth. He wanted to protect you, not punish you. She tried to reach the boy she'd raised. We can still resolve this as a family. It's not too late. Russell shot up, civility completely gone. He loomed over her bed, inches from her face, his eyes now blazing with contempt. It's been too late for years, Mother. The mansion? Already sold. Signed this morning. I have access to all the family bank accounts, thanks to that power of attorney you naively granted me. And that secret safe in the office? I found it 3 days ago, exactly where I suspected. Dorothy's blood ran cold. The safe held not just valuables, but the alternative will her husband had prepared, specifically disinheriting Russell if he harmed Dorothy or squandered the family fortune. The alternative will? She choked out, terror in her voice. Russell's smile widened, predatory. He sat back down, completely at ease. Burned. Every page, every contingency my father created to control me beyond the grave, all reduced to ashes. It's fascinating how quickly fire consumes paper, isn't it? Decades of planning, gone in minutes. Dorothy felt her chest constrict again. Her last shred of hope was cruelly torn away. No alternative will, no documents, no witnesses. She was utterly at his mercy. Why not just wait? She whispered, trying to understand this depth of cruelty. I'm an elderly woman, Russell. My remaining years are few. Why not let nature take its course? Russell walked to the small window, looking out at the cracked concrete courtyard where some elderly residents sat in wheelchairs, like wilting plants. When he turned back, all pretense was gone. Because I have no time to waste, Mother. Each day you're alive, something could go wrong. Someone might discover that will. Some old friend of his might ask inconvenient questions. He paused, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Besides, your fragile heart needs expensive medications, constant care. Resources I prefer to invest in my future, not in prolonging your past. The naked cruelty of his words hit Dorothy like a physical blow. It wasn't just greed, it was a horrifying absence of empathy. You will die in this nursing home, he continued, his voice barely audible. Nobody will believe a confused old woman. Your new medications? Placebos. Your stories of a cruel son? Delusions. In a week, maybe 2, your heart will simply stop. And I'll arrange a modest, but dignified funeral. The devoted son, devastated by the loss of his dear mother. Dorothy looked at her son, truly looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. There was no trace of the boy she loved. Just a stranger with his face, a man consumed by ambition, devoid of humanity. I understand now, she said softly, a surprising calmness enveloping her. You are no longer my son. My son died at some point, and I didn't notice. And you took his place. May God have mercy on your soul, Russell, because you will have no peace with what you're doing. Her tranquility seemed to rattle Russell more than any protest. He expected fear, despair. Her serene acceptance unnerved him. Keep your superstitions to yourself, old woman. God, if he exists, is clearly on my side so far. He walked to the door. I won't visit you again. The next news I'll have will be of your death. Goodbye, Mother. He shut the door firmly behind him. Dorothy remained motionless, absorbing the brutal reality. No more denial. Her own son had sentenced her to death, meticulously planned. The pain in her chest returned, sharper. I can't give up now. I need to find a way, she murmured, struggling to stay conscious. Lindsay, I need to speak with Lindsay. The sound of the door opening brought a last glimmer of hope. Lindsay rushed in, her face contorted with genuine concern. Dr. Mitchell, I need him immediately, she yelled into the hallway, trying to stabilize Dorothy. Hold on, Mrs. Dorothy. Don't give up now. I believe you." Lindsay's words were the last thing Dorothy heard before blacking out. Her body had reached its limit, deprived of medication, subjected to devastating emotional stress. But even as darkness enveloped her, one thought persisted. If this was to be her end, it would not be the end Russell had planned. Hours later, Dr. Mitchell, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, finished examining Dorothy. His grave expression left no doubt. "It's serious, Lindsay. Her heart is extremely compromised. She needs specific medication, a continuous treatment that was clearly abruptly interrupted." Lindsay bit her lip. "Doctor, she insists her son brought her here against her will, that he deliberately deprived her of her medications. At first, I thought confusion, but she seems perfectly lucid." The doctor nodded. He'd seen this before, families abandoning the elderly for their assets. But the complete absence of vital medication was sinister. "Without her heart medication, she has at most a week to live," he stated, his voice heavy. The silence was dense. Dorothy's fate seemed sealed. "We need to do something, doctor. We can't just let her die." Lindsay exclaimed, determination replacing helplessness. "She deserves more than this." "Everyone does." Dr. Mitchell looked at the young nurse, seeing a spark of the idealism he once had. "We'll do what we can with what we have," he finally said. "And meanwhile, perhaps it's time to question the story we were told by this apparently devoted son." While Russell toasted with Brittany, celebrating his perfect plan, a small spark of resistance was igniting in that decaying nursing home. A spark fueled by Lindsay's determination and Dorothy's unbreakable spirit. Later that night, in her modest apartment, Lindsay frantically typed on her worn laptop. Her eyes burned, but the image of Dorothy, fragile and abandoned, fueled her indignation. "I can't believe no one questioned Russell's story," she muttered, massaging her temples. "How can they just accept a perfectly lucid lady is confused because her son said so?" She was searching for anyone who knew Dorothy's family. Finally, buried in an old newspaper, she found a small note, a photo of Dorothy's wedding, and in the background, faithful Beatrice, with the family for more than 2 decades. Lindsay found an address. It was almost midnight, but Dorothy had only days. "She trusted me," Lindsay decided, grabbing her purse. "I can't fail her now." The taxi dropped Lindsay at a small suburban house. She hesitated, but when the porch light came on and a stern, gray-haired woman answered, Lindsay knew she'd found her. "My name is Lindsay. I'm a nurse at Golden Rest Nursing Home, and I need to talk to you about Dorothy," she blurted out. "She's in danger, and I think you're the only person who can help her." At Dorothy's name, Beatrice's face transformed, a mix of concern and alertness. She opened the door wider. Inside, old photos adorned the simple, tidy living room, a younger Dorothy, always smiling. "So Russell finally did what his father always feared," Beatrice said, her voice surprisingly firm. "I've been waiting for this visit for years, praying it would never come. Tell me everything. What has that wretch done to my dear Dorothy?" For the next hour, Lindsay recounted everything. With each word, Beatrice's face hardened, a contained fury growing in her eyes. When Lindsay finished, mentioning Dorothy's dwindling time, Beatrice rose abruptly, walking to a small wooden chest. With precise movements, she pulled an old key from a modest jewelry box. Mr. Henry, Dorothy's husband, was an extraordinarily intelligent man, she explained, holding the key like a sacred relic. He knew his own son better than anyone. Days before he died, he called me privately and entrusted me with a secret, a contingency plan to protect Dorothy. Beatrice revealed Henry had created a second, secret will. Hidden in a secret compartment in the mansion's office, it stipulated that Russell could only manage the family fortune if he properly cared for Dorothy. Otherwise, everything went to a foundation with Dorothy as president, Russell completely disinherited. Henry always said Russell had his talent for business, but not Dorothy's heart, Beatrice said with a sad smile. He hoped he'd never need to activate this plan, but he prepared everything meticulously. "I have a copy of the mansion key and know the exact location of the secret compartment." With growing hope, Lindsay and Beatrice meticulously planned their incursion into the mansion. Timing was crucial. Russell had sold the property, but the new owners hadn't moved in yet. This was their only chance. "Why did Mr. Henry entrust this to you and not a lawyer?" Lindsay asked, genuinely curious. Beatrice smiled, a smile that carried decades of untold stories. "Because I was more than a maid to them. I was a witness to their lives for 30 years. I saw Dorothy's silent tears, watched Russell grow and change. I noticed every small sign Henry recognized, but pretended not to spare Dorothy. He trusted me because I was the only person who knew his family as well as he did himself." The following night, the plan was on. The mansion was partially lit, security guards patrolling. Lindsay, dressed in black, heart-pounding, followed Beatrice through a hidden side entrance. The old key clicked. They moved like shadows through the familiar corridors. "We must be extremely quiet," Beatrice whispered. "Russell must suspect there are documents he hasn't found." In the elegant office, Lindsay felt like she was in a spy movie. Beatrice quickly located the portrait of young Dorothy. She carefully removed it, revealing the wall. Her fingers found a small imperfection, and with a click, a panel slid open. "Henry built this without anyone knowing," Beatrice explained. But inside, it was empty. "We're too late," she whispered, her face paling. "Russell must have found it." Suddenly, footsteps. They dove under the heavy desk. The door opened. A man's hand rested on the desk, inches from Lindsay. The figure headed directly to the exposed compartment. Lindsay squeezed Beatrice's hand. To their complete surprise, it wasn't Russell or a guard. It was a gray-haired gentleman, impeccably dressed. "Anthony," Beatrice breathed. "The family lawyer." "You can come out from under there," Anthony said, without even turning. "Beatrice, I'd recognize your lavender perfume anywhere." Beatrice slowly emerged, a mix of relief and confusion on her face. Lindsay followed hesitantly. Anthony finally turned, a slight smile softening his serious expression. "Anthony, how did you know we'd be here? And how did you get in without being noticed?" Beatrice asked. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Henry was much more meticulous than Russell ever imagined. "I removed the documents exactly 2 days ago after receiving a letter programmed to be delivered if Dorothy didn't make contact for more than a week. A security plan Henry and I developed together, anticipating precisely this scenario." Lindsay stepped forward, anxiety overriding her hesitation. "So, you know what happened to Mrs. Dorothy? You know she's in a precarious nursing home, without her medications, practically abandoned to die," she pleaded, the words spilling out. "The doctor said she is only 1 week without proper medication, and every minute counts now." Anthony nodded gravely, pulling out his cell phone. He made a brief call, speaking in codes. Hanging up, he turned back, a new determination in his eyes. "I've already initiated all necessary legal procedures. The real will, the one Russell never found, clearly stipulates that the fortune can only be managed by him if Dorothy is well cared for. Otherwise, absolutely everything goes to a foundation with Dorothy as president, and Russell is completely disinherited, with no right to contest." The next few hours were a whirlwind. From the office, they went directly to the nursing home, where Dorothy was still unconscious, but under Dr. Mitchell's watchful eye. A private ambulance, called by Anthony, transported her to the best hospital in the city, where a specialized medical team was waiting. Henry foresaw every detail, Beatrice commented to Lindsay, watching Anthony with the doctors. He knew Russell would eventually try something like this and prepared meticulously, protecting Dorothy even after his death. The next morning, Russell awoke in his luxurious penthouse, Brittany by his side, dreaming of his newly acquired fortune. But his dreams were shattered by the sound of powerful engines. He walked to the window, what he saw chilling him to the bone. 3 gleaming black luxury sedans, like something out of a movie about federal agents, parked below. Then, the first car door opened, revealing Anthony, impeccably dressed, carrying a folder of legal documents. The second held 2 serious court officers. But it was the third car that made Russell stagger back, his face paling. "It's not possible," he stammered. From the third black car emerged his mother, Dorothy. Visibly stronger, elegantly dressed, supported by Lindsay and a renowned private doctor. There was a dignity in her posture, a renewed strength in her determined gaze, that completely contradicted the image of the confused old woman he'd tried to create. How did she manage? Who helped her? Russell muttered, his mind racing. He rushed down to the lobby. "What is the meaning of this invasion?" he bellowed, trying to project indignation, trying to control the narrative one last time. "Mother, what are you doing here? You should be resting in the nursing home." Anthony stepped forward, extending an official document. His experienced gaze held no triumph, just the serene certainty of justice. "Russell, this is a court order immediately suspending the sale of the mansion, freezing all family bank accounts, and initiating an investigation for fraud, document forgery, and elder abuse." He spoke loudly enough for the doorman and curious residents to hear. "I suggest you cooperate fully to minimize the legal consequences of your actions." As the court officers moved in, Dorothy slowly approached her son. Their gazes met in a silent duel. His full of shock and rising panic. Hers a deep sadness mixed with unwavering determination. The world seemed to hold its breath. "You said I would die in that nursing home," Dorothy finally spoke, her voice soft but perfectly audible in the tense silence. "But your father always knew who you really were." The weeks that followed brought a complete reversal of fortune. Dorothy recovered in a luxurious private hospital room, surrounded by a dedicated medical team. Color returned to her cheeks and a renewed vitality pulsed through her, fueled by the justice that had finally prevailed. "Lindsay, I have no way to thank you enough for what you did for me," Dorothy said, holding the young nurse's hand. "Without your courage, Russell's plan would have worked." Lindsay smiled, genuinely happy. "I only did what any person with a conscience would do, Mrs. Dorothy. You didn't deserve that cruel fate." Dorothy adjusted her pillows, a determined expression replacing her gratitude. "I'm establishing a foundation exactly as Henry planned to help elderly people in vulnerable situations," she announced. "And I want you to accept a leadership position in it. No one better than you, who has seen firsthand the suffering of the abandoned, to help transform this reality." Meanwhile, Russell faced the devastating consequences of his actions. Evicted from his luxury apartment, his assets frozen, he packed the few possessions he had left. Brittany, predictably, had abandoned him the moment she realized the promised fortune was gone. The loneliness of the nearly empty apartment perfectly reflected the moral emptiness that had always resided in his heart. "Mr. Russell," a court officer announced, serving him another official document. "Mandatory appearance in court next week to answer charges of fraud and elder abuse." The story culminated on a golden autumn afternoon in the silent cemetery where Henry was buried. Dorothy, now elegant in dark blue, walked slowly, supported by her cane, accompanied by Beatrice and Lindsay. In her arms, a bouquet of red roses, Henry's favorite. At his simple gravestone, she gently asked for a moment of privacy. "You always said our son had your talent for business, but not my heart," she murmured, placing the flowers on the cold marble. "Now I'll use your fortune to help abandoned elderly people, like I almost was." A solitary tear slid down her wrinkled face as the sun began its descent, painting the sky with orange and pink. It wasn't just the end of a story of betrayal and redemption, but the beginning of a new journey, transforming past pain into hope for many. "Thank you for foreseeing everything, my love," she whispered, touching the name on the stone. "Even in absence, you still managed to protect me." As the three women walked out, the last ray of sunlight illuminated Henry's gravestone, a final farewell before night fell. The end of a day, the beginning of a new chapter. So, what do you think? What would you have done if you were Dorothy, facing that kind of betrayal from your own child? Or have you ever witnessed someone showing such incredible cruelty, or found an unexpected ally who helped you overcome it? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to hear what you have to say.